right. I'd like to call to order the May 5th, 2025 Committee of the Whole Regular Board Meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. Those who are able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone joining this evening in person and those viewing remotely from home. I would like to announce the board held executive sessions on April 24th, 28th, 30th, and May 2nd regarding personnel, and also prior to this meeting regarding personnel, student discipline, and legal cases, including case number 4:2-CV-01144-MWB, case number PERA-C-22-139-E, grievance number 01-2425, and a complaint with no assigned case, with a case number 3240217. Board members, with an agenda before you, are there any changes? All right, seeing none, I'd like to ask the board secretary to conduct a roll call of board members.
Dr. Anderson?
Here.
Dr. Nader?
Here.
Ms. Brandt?
Here.
Dr. Buck?
Here.
Dr. Crevecoeur?
Here.
Dr. Dino?
Here.
Ms. Huff?
Here.
Dr. Miller?
Here.
Thank you. So just really quickly, I wanted to note that May kicks off Mental Health Awareness Month. Surprisingly, I learned that Mental Health Awareness Month was started in 1949. Yes, way back in the 1900s, kids. And it was started by the nonprofit Mental Health America, which was formed in 1909. So this is something we've been facing for a long time. This year's theme is Turn Awareness into Action. And in that spirit tonight, I'm wearing my freshly modified My Mental Health Matters Club from the high school, and it's in green for mental health awareness. That's their signature color. So this week also marks Teacher Appreciation Week. And so on behalf of the board, I'd like to express our deepest gratitude for the kindness, generosity, and dedication our teachers bring to work every day. We sincerely appreciate all that you do, both seen and unseen. Your efforts make a difference, and your impact reaches far beyond our classroom walls. We thank you. And with that, I'd like to have Mr. Johnson give his superintendent update.
Thank you, Amy. I would like to recognize the Teacher Appreciation Week. This community is extremely fortunate to have such dedicated faculty and staff empowering our students to grow, flourish, and achieve their goals. Their commitment to shaping student lives and preparing them for learning and success inspires me every time I see it when visiting schools. Faculty and staff make a huge difference to students every day with their patience and caring. And for that, I am proud to be your colleague. Thank you to our entire school community for our daily commitment to our students. Because we had to call a day off school unexpectedly last week, we would normally make that day up according to the academic calendar used in our snow days. However, given the circumstances of the event and how late it is in the year, we have decided that students will not make up the day. I can hear the applause. Therefore, Friday, June 6th will be our last day for students, and it will be a half day of school. For our employees, Monday, June 9th will be an in-service day, followed by a teacher work day on June 10th and a trade day on June 11th. Thank you to our entire community for your patience and understanding as we work through the effects of the storm last Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'd like to welcome Angel Henward, our student representative from Delta, for this last marking period. We welcome your insights and perspective, and feel free to raise your hand or contribute at any point in time as we discuss different issues. And I hear you're going to provide us with an update on some student initiatives tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Bader. Congratulations to the State High TSA chapter members for their outstanding performance at the recent Pennsylvania TSA state competition. The chapter notched state championships in audio podcasting, board game design, debating technological issues, manufacturing prototype, STEM mass media, and technology bowl. In addition, the chapter collected 6 runner-ups and 7 third places. Individual team members are named in a story on the district website. Congratulations to the Park Forest Middle School TSA chapter for having 9 state championships after the recent TSA state championships. The chapter earned titles in biotechnology, challenging technology issues, chapter team, data science and analytics, inventions and innovations, mass production, microcontroller design, systems control technology, and technology bowl. Team members were also runner-ups in 4 events and third place finishers in 3 events. Individual team members are named in a story on the district website.
Thank you, Angel. Jackie, do you have any legislative updates for us this evening?
I have a lot, but I will just keep it brief because I don't feel super organized about it. So at the federal level, the budget is reconciliation process is ongoing. There's not a lot of movement. It's still stuck in Ways and Means. At the state level, the Senate Education Committee is having a meeting tomorrow morning. At the last minute, they decided to add a discussion. I'm not sure it's an action item, but they have put SB 10 on the agenda, which is this session's state voucher bill. So that's coming back again. And I'm going to be going to Harrisburg tomorrow, and then several of us are going next Tuesday to talk with several legislatures. So we will update you more after that. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jackie.
I would also like to let Jackie know that she's the only board member that has been allowed to go with the superintendents on this day.
I'm allowed now? I'm not crashing?
I think she'll be a good sidekick for you all. She's pretty good at this. Gretchen and Peter, do you have anything from COG for this evening?
You don't? I find myself speechless this evening, so no, I don't have anything.
Alrighty. Then we now have time for public comment. Each individual will be allotted up to 3 minutes for items related to board business that are not a consent or action item this evening. For those items, public comment will be held just prior to voting on that item. We have a new sign-up procedure, so I know we have one person signed up in advance. Jen Moeni, would you like to join us at the podium and provide your public comment for this evening? And then we'll check online once you're completed.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Money and I reside in Ferguson Township. The recent threat to the school has shown us the necessity of meeting the fundamental needs of students within the district. As a researcher, I took a dive into the literature, searching for something that would fully address the safety, mental health, and educational needs of the SCASD community. What I discovered I had to share because there is a component in the school equation that I believe has gone unaddressed thus far. Social science research has identified 4 crucial wellness factors: emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual. The connection between mental health and spiritual health is evident in survey data and even MRI brain scans. Psychology Today stated that with mental health challenges becoming the norm, effective support is becoming more crucial. Harvard has a research initiative on health, religion, and spirituality, and a Columbia University researcher found that personal spirituality is protective against the development of mental health disorders, with a major depressive disorder being 60% less likely. This effect was found across different religions and cultures. Interestingly, school social activities such as clubs and sports did not appear to substitute for effect of religion and spirituality. The Pew Research Center reported that 68% of Pennsylvanians identify as religious. While SCASD has worked to address the emotional, mental, and physical factors, the spiritual aspect remains unaddressed. When students and teachers seek spiritual help from trained professionals within schools, there is improved school safety, student-teacher relationships, and less bullying. These trained professionals help build resilience and foster a positive school culture while working to improve mental health through the spiritual wellness pillar and are already utilized in many areas of society, such as hospitals, the military, and educational institutions. Within SCASD, I propose policy development for volunteer chaplains that would allow spiritual care consistent with students' and teachers' faith traditions. Volunteer chaplains would add no personnel cost to the district. Policy would include a fully voluntary parent opt-in, professional certification or equivalent, additional training, and applicable clearances. Is this legal? Yes. Voluntary chaplain services for students and teachers fit within existing legal frameworks. Additionally, there is pending legislation in the Pennsylvania House Education Committee as House Bill 1206, Student and Teacher Support Act, to support this policy, authorizing school districts to even hire chaplains and incorporate them into the school. By implementing a volunteer chaplain policy, SCASD would be working to mitigate a previously unaddressed risk factor for mental health within the school by fully supporting our students, teachers, and staff. I would be happy to discuss this further with anyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lynn, do we have anyone online that would like to make a public comment this evening? No hands raised. Okay. Anyone else here in person?
Jennifer Black, Half Moon Township. You may have heard of the term butterfly effect. The following explanation is taken from Wikipedia. The butterfly effect describes a phenomenon in chaos theory whereby a minor change in circumstances can cause a large change in outcome. The scientific concept is attributed to Edward Lorenz, a mathematician and meteorologist who used the metaphor to describe his research findings related to chaos theory and weather prediction. As we move closer to the anniversary of my daughter Abby's passing a week from today, I have a small but important request that relates to the butterfly effect. My sweet Abigail Elizabeth was an extraordinary human. She was strong, intelligent, athletic, extremely strong-willed, or I should say persistent. She was incredibly thoughtful and caring. She often offered a smile to those who needed it the most. This is a text I received from another mom last summer. Hello, Jen. My daughter, currently in 8th grade, who has autism and is in learning support, has had a difficult time with being treated poorly by peers and just finding her place at school. However, she loves school and refuses to seek any other form of schooling. It was long about December, give or take, when she was having a particularly tough time and we were just trying to find some positives and good things to look at school. During the conversation, she said, "There is a girl that says hi to me every morning." I asked if she knew her name. She didn't. But I assure you, the very next day, she knew her name. She came home and reported, "Her name is Abby Smith, Mom." Abby's welcoming hello each day will be forever remembered, not only by my daughter, but also by me. So on May 12th, which is the anniversary of her passing, I would ask anyone who is up for the challenge to test out the butterfly effect. Our family is asking everyone to deliberately do something small but kind for someone else. We encourage you to set an intention the day before, write it down on a piece of paper and carry it with you all day. By all means, do more than one thing if you're able. Could be something you do for someone you know well or for a complete stranger. I plan to write notes of gratitude for those who have been by our sides nonstop since last year. I also plan to approach strangers in a store, tell them Abby's story, and give them a small handmade item. No act of kindness is too small. I have no doubt that Abby had and continues to have an immense impact on this world in her far too short 14 and a half years. Please join us in spreading the kindness on Monday, May 12th in her memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else here in person? Okay. We're going to move on then to our Committee of the Whole portion of the agenda. We have 3 reports from Culture, Climate, and Learning Committee. I'd like to call the team up for an overview of new textbook requests for 2025-26.
Good evening. The curriculum department is bringing forward 2 textbooks for the upcoming school year. The first is for our CTC course on nurse's aid. This course is requesting a new textbook because we are required to replace the textbook every 5 years, and the state deems which textbook we should purchase. So that's included here. That book, along with the AP US History book that we're requesting, will be on display in the curriculum office. For anyone who would like to review it, they just need to call and make an appointment to do that. The other textbook we are requesting is for AP US History. It is an AMSCO textbook. Many of our social studies AP courses are using AMSCO as part of their instruction. So that has also been reviewed by a team of social studies teachers and will be included as part of the materials that they use for our AP US History courses.
Thanks, Jackie. Any questions from board members? All right, that's pretty straightforward this year, not
Yeah,
too
it
many.
sure is. Thank you.
Thanks. Up next, we have a request to renew the Young Scholars of Central PA Charter for 2025 through 2030. Excuse me. Dr. Bucher is going to join us for this update.
Good evening.
Thanks.
So as part of the renewal process, Young Scholars is looking to have a five-year renewal of its charter. A group of administrators back in January did a review of many different documents and took a tour of their school. There's about a 20-page report for you to look through when you're in your free time to look through. But wanted to make sure that you're aware of the team members that are listed there and the process overall. We gave an executive summary of the concerns as far as the renewal for the Young Scholars. It is with reservation that we do recommend that upon your consideration at the next meeting to approve their charter for another 5 years based on the information that we are able to assess through the review.
Okay, so I'll open it up to the floor. I mean, certainly we can ask questions again when it's an action item, but since we're here for information and discussion, I'll open it up for any questions or discussion from the board. Peter?
So what other districts feed Young Scholars?
Bellefonte, Penns Valley, there's quite a few. In Huntington, Tyrone.
Okay. Of the 500 districts in the Commonwealth, are any of them in the bottom 1.5% of teacher pay?
I would not be able to answer that at this point.
Okay. So then a follow-up question to that would be, does the pool averaged per pupil expenditure then in all of the districts that feed, are they cumulatively in the 1.5, in the bottom 1.5 or 2% of teacher pay?
Without making a generalization, I can find that answer out and let you know.
Yeah, I would like the answer to that question. That was pretty concerning to me. We have evidence that there's a lack of alignment with standards. Can you explain why that matters?
So I think it's the basis of what we are tasked to deliver to students in our state. So I would say that if there's not an alignment, that's concerning as far as what all of our graduates should be leaving high school with. This is a middle school, kindergarten through middle school program. So that alignment would trickle up as students move to the next grade if they're lacking reinforcement in those standards.
And it's the expectation that our teachers do that,
Correct.
right? Okay. Did you want to say something about that?
I want to say that there was, the teachers created a union, unionized there and increased the pay for them. So I don't know if they're still at that low of a rate. I know there were some substantial increases when it came to teacher rate. they are still lower than any of the surrounding public
But
schools.
the 2023 data, which is what, right, 2023, that's what we're using? That's
That
what we
would be
have
the
to work
case.
with. We don't have the 2024 data because,
Correct.
you know, I understand that. Okay.
Okay.
Are our policies available online?
They are correct. Yeah,
The
board
districts
docs.
are.
Correct.
But their bylaws are not?
That's my understanding, correct.
No, the bylaws are, the policy manual is not.
The policy manual is not. Okay. Minutes from their meetings, I'm right, are not available?
We were provided some when requested.
When
but, They
requested.
were not accessible to the public online.
Okay. And it's not, if I understand right, the minutes did not record who made motions or how board members voted.
In the few that we looked at, no.
Okay. Are we allowed to do that?
Some votes we can record a simple majority, but there are a number of ones required by law that we register the actual votes of individual board members, yes. Like any contract, we have to record who voted how.
Public schools, which apparently charter schools are public schools, but public schools get quite a rap for sometimes not being transparent. I mean, I would dispute this vehemently from our district. So some of these things, I'm a little bit, some of these things just sort of, they don't rub me very well. I'm done.
Okay. Yeah, Ann? And then, I'm sorry, Erin, you had your hand up. We can go to you next.
Going to the discussion of special education services, you highlight two areas, and I just wanted to ask about one in particular right now, is the least restrictive environment. It plans to develop an improvement plan to ensure students with disabilities spend less than 40% of their day. Is there a way, when will we, like, can we get an accounting of that improvement plan? Or, I mean, how does, this is the first time I've had to do this kind of, I don't know, certification. And so I'm interested, that number is concerning. And I understand the recommendation. How do we know it's been improved upon? Is there a timeline for that? Can you explain that process to me? Because that is very concerning.
So they have to submit a comprehensive plan like we do.
Yeah, thanks.
And that is reviewed. Their special education plan is a part of that. I also found out recently by attending these networking authorization meetings that a lot of the responsibility is on the school district that the charter resides in, okay, to at least to show and provide a series of recommendations and expectations. And so we have been working with young scholars, Jonathan especially, in sharing this report of the areas that are in needs of improvement to help them as far as when the next time we have to do this authorization, that they have these things addressed.
So
Is our next opportunity to monitor improvement 5 years?
that would be the next approval of the charter renewal. So I attended some of the meetings with CJ as well to this national network of charter authorizers. So it's a group working to help those who authorize charters perform their duties as best they can. It's a national organization, so the laws are different state to state. Pennsylvania, it's kind of a gray area, this issue, so the framework is kind of like we're responsible for approving their charter. And certainly we've learned from Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and a few other Commonwealth districts that they do create these improvement plans and monitoring plans, and they ask for return of data. within that 5-year timeframe. And I think that's excellent, and I think that's the intent of the administrative team. It can be a little tricky, though, once the charter is approved, they have that charter for 5 years. So while, as Mr. Johnson said, we're kind of tasked with oversight, our ability to, there's not a lot of teeth to that tasking, I'll put it that way.
There are also issues where you were not on the board yet, Ann, but 5, 6 years ago, Wonderland Charter School, in the middle of a charter, we became aware of issues relating to its special education program, and we conducted an investigation, and we're moving toward revocation of that charter in the middle of the term, and they voluntarily relinquished the charter on their own. So there are opportunities in between the renewal periods themselves, depending upon what's going on.
Yeah, that case was significant. Lynn let me know that Heather might have something to add. She's online. She's our director of special ed. So
lovely.
I don't know if she wanted to answer something that you had asked. Heather, was there something specific you wanted to answer to Ann?
Hi. Hi, good evening. Good evening. I just wanted to highlight that the 2 areas that we identified were those that the Bureau of Special Education called out as part of their cyclical monitoring that took place during this current school year. And so whenever the Bureau identifies those areas, they issue something that's called a CAV, which is a corrective action report that they need to then work with the LEA to complete. So in those 2 areas, the BSE advisor will work with young scholars on their corrective action plan and follow up with them. And so while we might not see it directly, the state will be working with young scholars to make sure that they have that corrective action plan in place and follow through with it on those 2 areas that we called out.
Yeah. Sorry, that's an essential piece. Unfortunately, in dealing with Wonderland several years ago, there were some missed opportunities, I think, in that situation, but that was several years ago. So, was there anything else, Ann?
I can stop.
Okay. Yeah. Aaron, I think you were next, and then Carlene. He was right after Peter.
So I am very curious about the statement at the top that references their finances. Specifically, I think it says something to the effect of business costs not being reflective of SCASD's financial contribution. And I'm trying to kind of decipher their financial statements. I'm wondering, is that to say that they spend more than they get from us? They spend significantly less than they get from us? And I do notice there's an unassigned fund balance there. Are they held to the same standards as we are for that kind of an unassigned fund balance?
I think Mr. Brown's going to join us.
I figured he would. He's the money
I'm not Randy Brown.
man. None of us are.
What was meant by that comment was that they were not spending equivalently comparable dollars in specific areas as to what we do spend on our students, yes. And they are held to the same state requirement, but it's a graduated scale depending on the amount of your annual budget. So they can, for their fund balance, they must have a much smaller portion because their budget is obviously much smaller.
So it's the same, like 8%?
No, it's less than 8%.
Less than, okay, all right.
Jackie, would clarifying
Aaron,
comment?
can I
you
give
have?
an example?
Yes,
So in the report,
please.
it indicates that, okay, so I'm gonna give you 3 numbers. So we have, when a special ed student leaves SCASD and decides to attend a brick and mortar charter school, we're paying over $36,000 for that student. However, if you look at our spending within the district, we spend on average about $26,000 per special education student, recognizing that like those costs can vary drastically between individuals. When we look at YSCP spending, they're spending on average a little under $16,000 per special education student. So this can be partly explained because they're not only drawing students from our district, and every district pays a different amount for their special education students that go to YSCP, but it's a little, it's, the numbers don't quite add up the way we would expect them to. Does that make sense?
And it goes back to the way that the funding formula was originally calculated when the state makes it this flat rate. It's basically an escalator on our basic tuition rate to come up with this special ed rate. As opposed to basing it on what we get, like when we get special ed funding from the state, it's in 3 different tiers depending on, like, there's a number of students in tier 1 that's like maybe something like speech. And then you have tier 2, and then tier 3 are some of our highest need students that are the most costly as well. So the state, when we get money, puts it in those 3 buckets, but when it comes to charter funding, that's not the approach that the legislature used when they established the payment. It's just this flat rate that it's come up with based off of our original tuition rate.
So then the additional money, does that get spent elsewhere? Does it get reimbursed to us? Does it just?
No, that's theirs at their discretion.
I see.
That's the way the law is.
And by discretion,
So it might be paying their rent or their payroll or other things involved in the
anything.
operation of the school.
Yes, this has been an item I've been very passionate about with legislators for many, many years.
yes.
Because there was been some studies, not Young Scholars, but some other charters in the Philadelphia area who, and Wonderland specifically was one of the issues where our concern was a over-identification of children with speech. So I can't remember the exact numbers, but like the normal population would have about 5%, and like that particular charter had like 30% of their students, or basically all their special ed students were only speech pathology, which wouldn't be what you would expect in a typical population. And speech pathology is one of the least costly disabilities or problems to remediate. So that's been an issue with legislators and the need for charter funding reform. But right now the high focus is on cyber.
And I'm not saying this is true of YSCP in particular, but I think I remember hearing a story about a charter group, maybe it was the cyber charters, who basically were taking a lot of money that ended up in owning physical property. Is that, I'm not saying.
That's a discussion in the cyber charter world at this point.
Okay,
For now,
okay.
yeah, so not YSCP.
Not, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Carlene?
Yes, thank you. I had some real problems with this document that we received because it had significant red flags, and yet we're told that we should approve it because they still comply with the legal parameters. So if this is the case, why were we given all of this, and why was this written up this way? Because it's a lot to read, and it was very interesting. But if we, at the end of the day, we just have to approve it because they meet the legal parameters, then it's kind of like a waste. It's a lot of time put into this and everything, and yet we just have to approve it because it's very hard to revoke it, especially if they're meeting the legal requirements.
So this was kind of a topic of the seminars that I know you went to more than I got to, but the couple that I went to, this is kind of the conundrum. And, you know, the Pittsburgh and Philadelphia areas, they have such large numbers of students and large numbers of charters. They actually have personnel within the district, like that's their sole job, is to oversee charters. And so they certainly put together sometimes these interim plans where they ask them to make improvements. And, you know, and what they shared is certainly there's a number of charters that are very amenable to engaging with the district, using, you know, the advice and expertise that they lend in these situations, and do make improvements like sooner than their 5-year renewal. And so the conversation in the authorizers webinar program is about, you know, we care about students and we care about their success and their outcomes. And so by doing this work, our hope is to help all students continue to get better. I mean, that's the biggest motivator. We want all kids to do well in public school, whether it's in our buildings or not in our buildings.
It's definitely a conflict of interest. But we do our best for our students, no matter where they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think too, so I've been here a long time, and so we've been through how many renewals? We've been through Young Scholars before, Nittany Valley, Wonderland at least once, and CLC. And so We haven't always in the past asked for, well, I don't know, there's always been asked for data. I don't know the board has always discussed as much of the data. But really when we started to do that much more aggressively was when we started to uncover issues at Wonderland. And so I do think it's important work to be done, because in the case, if there's a case where something really untoward is happening, that's the way it's oftentimes revealed, so.
And I think a follow-up in this is that also the community gets to understand what's involved in charter school and the oversight.
Correct. I agree. Yes, Peter?
Yeah, so there are, I guess, two things that are coming to mind. The first is that, you know, I believe, like the teachers who work in our district, the teachers at Young Scholars want their students to succeed, right? I mean, I don't think that that's really, I want to be very careful in the criticism that I'm giving, that I am not attacking people who give their work to our kids, and I appreciate that a lot. The structure of the law that Carlene is bringing up and that you've addressed, Dr. Bader, also is horrible. Eugene De Pasquale, the former Auditor General, called it the worst charter school law in the country.
And he's not the only one.
And he is not the only one. And then the newer Auditor General, right, dealing with cyber charter, has found it incredibly lacking where that is. So, you know, I think that to sort of pile on to Carlene's frustration, we have a law that is garbage. You know, it is really, really bad. And if you know, Eugene De Pasquale also said in his criticism, you're either public or you're not. And the problem is that they are not subject. None of them are subject to the same kind of strictures that we are. And so it's sort of this like, you know, all animals are created equal, but some animals are more equal than other situation. And, you know, our legislators have not been responsive about this. And I don't really know how to deal with that very well if they just won't do it.
Well, there's been a lot of challenges, as I'm sure Jackie could talk to you about for hours, as could I. I will remark that the two Auditor Generals you mentioned fall on opposite sides of the partisan line, so this is certainly not a strictly partisan issue. It is very much so about accountability, and also, I mean, for myself, speaking for myself, my biggest concerns are about the funding structures, and that they're just not common sense based in many cases, such as I explained about the special ed funding. Did you have something else you want to add, Jackie?
Yeah, I know we've kind of highlighted some of the issues that are brought up in the report, but like Peter alluded to teacher pay. And so, you know, just to kind of put it clearly, like every 7 regular ed students that decide to elect to go to a charter school from SCASD, for every 7 students that elect a charter school, that's a teacher. That's a teacher from our district. And we don't have any classrooms with 7 people in them. There is no 7-to-1 teacher ratio. And right, our facility costs, our transportation costs, our salary costs are not going to go down from losing 7 students, but we essentially lose a position. And so to find out that teachers are being paid at such a lower rate at the charter school, when the salary we're paying our teachers is baked into the formula of how we pay the charter schools in our district, it's a little disappointing to me. Yeah.
And I would add that, you know, costs for co-curriculars and a variety of other things, every enrichment thing that we do within our district also factors into that cost, as well as our requirement to meet gifted ed requirements. So that is not required of charter schools. However, we are required, so all that staffing that we provide for our gifted programs feeds into the cost that goes into the tuition cost, and yet that's not a requirement for those. I had a couple specific questions I actually wanted to ask if others are kind of done some of those things. I
have a question when you're done.
Sure. I noted there was a comment about some challenges with, there was a lack of demographics provided with the report of the safe schools infractions. And my question would be, we've historically we're cited for disproportionality and discipline, but if a school is not reporting the demographics, then there's no ability for the state to then catch that. Is that correct? Would that make sense?
It would make sense that, Mrs. Beaver, would you be able to comment on that since that was your part of the report?
I'll let Stephanie double check and she can come back when she lets us know. I can go on. The other question I had was, I was a little confused. There was a little bit of a comment about the I'm assuming SAP, the Student Assistance Program, and a critique of some lack of training for some individuals. Does that sound correct? So the question I had is, and Stephanie, this might turn out to be for you too, but SAP is an integral part of flagging things for our threat assessment, correct? Like, not always. Student assistance sometimes falls in a lot of realms, but at times that program might alert us to something that needs a threat assessment. Would that be fair to say? I mean, we use a number of kinds of things to alert us to potential threats, so it's safe to say, all those other things, but thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
no problem. Yes and no. So you can think of SAP very much like the MTSS process, and where we would take students to the SAP team or an MTS team and discuss like how students might have strengths and weaknesses and what supports need to be into place. Does not necessarily lead to threat assessment, but really is an intervention piece to catch things before they happen and to provide services and supports. YSB is our liaison here that we work with, and we have a SAP liaison. She works with the county, she works with schools and agencies to kind of connect those outside providers and supports.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it just came to mind that, a student that's struggling sometimes has other earmarks, and a lack of training there would be a potential concern. So I had asked about the demographics for safe school reporting. I mean, disproportionality comes from that data, correct? So if there's if data is being reported for infractions for under the safe schools requirement and there's no demographic data, then there's no means for the state to identify for disproportionality. Would that be fair to say?
That would be fair to say.
Okay, so that's concerning to me. It was an issue we dealt with and faced, and it's pretty common, unfortunately. And so I think it's really important that data is being evaluated and tracked to make sure that that's not happening. And I'm not accusing it of happening. I'm just saying if the data is not there, then there's no way to know. The other question I had was in regard to interventions. Is it correct that I read that there were issues about not tracking response to intervention? I know they're not using response to intervention as a means of identification, which is one of the tools that can be used. And maybe that's a question for Heather. I just had, and you could bring this back, but when you could.
Is that in reference to federal programs?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason I ask about it is because having had a child that had to go through response to interventions, not tracking response to intervention can be very concerning. The key issue is the student needs to be closing the gap. And we know that students need to make more than a year's worth of progress. If they've got a substantial gap, they usually need to make 1.5 or even 2 years worth of progress within a year to close a gap. And if we're not tracking if someone is not tracking response to intervention, then there's no way to know whether that intervention is being effective for that student. Additionally, if the student is not managing to close the gap at all, that's a red flag that a student needs an evaluation potentially for special ed services. So I know that they've been approved for their child find services, but having been through that process personally a couple times, that was a kind of concern for me that there were some issues there. The last thing I wanted to ask about was 504s. Did I understand correctly from the document that essentially, at least according to the 2023 data, there was no evidence that 504s were being implemented?
None that was in the
Was shared.
Was shared or anything. They could be providing supports and it not be documented through 504. So that's definitely an independent, like private schools, they, they don't necessarily need to document.
Right, but private schools are not subject to the same
but
requirements as a
yes,
public school.
But public schools, yeah.
Okay. That was surprising to me, knowing the number of 504s we have in our buildings. I know the population is much smaller, but 504s are pretty routine for students with ADHD, and that's pretty common.
You have to understand the law of 504 says substantially
Substantial.
limiting within the classroom. So if there's adequate supports being provided, it might not be impacting.
No, that's not what the law says.
Okay.
Sorry. So, well, we can argue that fact, but there has to be substantial interruption, but it has to be, it doesn't, like if a student utilizes medication, you have to take in an account like under the most stressful circumstances ideally. So you can't account for, you can't use the accommodations as a way to say the student is coping. It's supposed to be an evaluation of the student when they don't have accommodations in the or they're, even if they're, say, an ADHD student, if they're not choosing to use medication, because that would be their baseline circumstance. And so that would dictate whether they need the accommodations if they can't
Right.
function.
You would want to, like, part of the evaluation process is to gather teacher feedback, to do a collective comprehensive evaluation,
Right.
to understand how it's impacting within the classroom.
Yeah, I know.
environment.
So you were probably referring to the scores, and I'm sorry, I'm a little sensitive about that one because you do have to be careful about like what factor we use for which part to make sure that it's fair to the student. Anyway, I brought that up just because I found that really a little bit surprising, and yeah. And I just wanted to call attention to it. So those were the notes I had on my list. I think, Gretchen, you said you had something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, so I've been back before Amy started her questions, back to sort of what Peter and Carlene were getting at. I've been hearing about these issues for over a decade now with charter schools and charter law. I've sat in this room many times with state legislators telling us there's nothing they can do, why there's nothing they can do. And I have been told for over 10 years now that I have to vote yes on the charters because otherwise there would be legal ramifications for the district, and that would not be a good use of taxpayers' money to spend on legal expenses. And so my question's for you, Scott. Legally, if we were to actually try to do something about this, which we've all been talking about for probably longer than I've been around, and we were to vote no, what legal issues are we exposing the school district to by doing that?
Well, I presume, trying to get to the correct distance, I presume young scholars would appeal to the Charter School Appeal Board and we would lose. So I don't know that that's a costly ramification. I mean, for me, I prefer when I'm representing the district in a situation like that, that I have a reasonably good legal basis for doing it. I'm certainly willing to make 50-50 arguments in front of a judge, or even maybe not even odds that are that good, but I'd prefer not to be standing in front. In this case, it's a board, not a single judge. I'd prefer not to be making an argument where there's really not a factual or legal basis to support it. So you're free to vote no. If a majority of you vote no and they appeal it, as I assume they would do, we'll simply lose based upon the review of the administration.
And also based on the
Thank
history
you.
of the Charter Review Board.
Right.
I just think it's good to say it out loud in a public meeting so that the community realizes what we're up against here. Because we've actually had, as Amy knows, we've actually had members of the community throughout the years every once in a while come and make a public comment and say, you know, how can you school board members be voting yes on this? What are you, idiots? Don't you know what's actually happening? And so we do know what's actually happening, but as Dr. Eddard just described, this is the situation that we find ourselves in as board members.
Very briefly, if we look at the history of the charter school law, and I'm estimating based upon the age of my second son, that's a little bit over 20 years old at this point in time, this district has been pushing back at various points in time based upon the conventional and not so conventional thought. Wonderland, its application was denied. We lost on appeal to the appeal board on a 3-2 vote, but we continued to work on that and then ultimately had sufficient information to legally support the initiation of revocation procedure. Not lately that I can recall at least, but certainly in the first 5 to 10 years of the charter school law, we got probably as many as 5, if not more, charter school applications and denied them without appeals being filed. And we've done other things, but the law is the law, and it does not give us a lot of latitude absent very, very, very extreme circumstances to do something.
Thanks, Scott. Debbie?
I just wanted to follow up briefly a little bit on what Jackie was talking about with some of the finance questions. So it's a relatively small school. I don't even remember seeing the enrollment in the document, but maybe I missed it. But what fraction, what percentage, what share of the Young Scholars students come from SCASD?
It's less than 50%.
Less than 50%. Okay. And in the discussion of the variation in the cost per student that we spend on special ed students, that Young Scholars spends on special ed students, and that Young Scholars receives from us for special ed students, there's this statement at the end of that section that says, you know, but keep in mind that the tuition received from each sending district varies widely, but it's not specified. So I'm just curious if we could be a little bit more specific, like where do we fall in the spectrum? Are we sending the most money per student? Are we spending the least? Okay, that's what I figured. So again, I think our taxpayers, it's important for them to understand, through no fault of our own, that we are effectively subsidizing the education of students from other districts when we have to send this money to the charter school, right? They are a public school, they're receiving public monies, they receive different amounts of monies from different school districts, and it sounds like if they take less than half of their enrollment comes from SCASD, I'm guessing more than half of their funding comes from SCASD. So I just thought it would be important to point that out. That's all. Thanks.
Yeah, Aaron?
Just want to sort of ask this question from a different perspective, not necessarily, I mean, I think there's plenty to be concerned about and to monitor, but I guess I also, the money that we're paying out and their enrollment also reflects decisions by parents. So I would also ask the question from our perspective of the parents of the kids who are there, why have they chosen Young Scholars as opposed to State College? So I don't know that it's entirely about what they do versus what, you know, it doesn't rise to the level of State College. Frankly, I know plenty of people who have put their kids through Young Scholars. They come to SCASD. They're very well educated. Actually, I would say socially and emotionally, they're pretty well adapted. But I would just want us also to ask the question, this is a reflection on us as well, because they wouldn't have 45% of their people coming from us and all this money if they weren't choosing that, right? So maybe we want to pay attention to why parents select into that, or maybe what we can do differently, or what can we improve. And I think we always do that. But I also don't want to take away the agency of the parents who selected to put their kids in there.
Agreed. I think one piece of historical information for just to share with you, I don't know, probably 6, 7 years ago, this was a discussion we had is, you know, why are people choosing charters more often? And so there were some efforts to have administrators reach out to those families. And in some cases, they were families who came from areas where there were a lot of charters. It was pretty common to go to charter school, and it was just kind of their default. In other cases, they didn't know much about our schools. And so I opened up, you know, I know principals often give tours to people that are debating or deciding about those issues, and provide a little bit more information about what we offer in terms of programming and different things. And we've seen some shifts in our numbers as a result of that. I saw in one of your updates, we're going to have an open house meeting.
But one of the other things is their global perspective. They teach a lot of foreign language to the younger elementary students, which we don't currently have in our elementary.
Yep. There was a lot of discussion about that back when we changed the school day, but STEM was the overriding choice that was made at that time. So, all right. I think we should wrap this up because there's a lot of other things unless there's a pressing question from any other board members. So we'll see this back at a future board meeting. No, this is an informational item. When we vote on it, you're welcome to give public comment. That'll be at the next meeting or during the general public comment. Yep, happy to start to explain.
Email?
Yep, and you're always welcome to email the board, absolutely, at all dash hyphen, or is dash or hyphen, the little short one. Board, yes. Okay. So the last item we have for culture, climate, and learning is about Character Strong K through 12. I think Ms. Yoder is going to join us, and Stephanie, you're already with us. And it's role in PBIS and Tier 1 elementary.
So last May, actually almost to the date, you approved Character Strong for our middle school program, and we initiated that as a Tier 1 curriculum support. Oh, this is going to get loud and soft here. So we've been implementing that as our Tier 1 curriculum in 6th through 8th grade this year. We also added in Tier 2 interventions, which is a Tier 2 solution for middle schools, K through 12. So all of our counselors have access to that. Just trying to think through a continuum of support and making sure our programming and our curriculum aligns from K all the way up to 12. So we're looking at a Tier 1 elementary school, so making a change from Second Step to Character Strong. Character Strong is evidence-based and it's backed by CASEL. There's a lot of research on there. We did open this up in January through March to some of our elementary school teachers to try it out and kind of take it for a test drive. We received really a lot of positive feedback and you can see that in the board memo and just in regards to things that they shared in regards to building like school culture and climate engagement. Just felt like it was more authentic. I think sometimes, when you have a program for so long, like Second Step, it just felt a little stale. So how do we kind of, make better connections for our students? We've also talked about needs and supports, what professional development needs to look like so that we're actually rolling this out and delivering with fidelity. So do you want to add anything?
So we did take a lot of time, as you knew from last year, started with the Tier 2 with our school counselors. The nicest piece about it is, as Stephanie said, it is evidence-based for Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. So everybody's going to get it in the classroom at that Tier 1 level, but our counselors, possibly some of our school psychs, our social or emotional and autistic support special ed, can use some of those practices in Tiers 2 and 3 that are fully aligned to what they're already getting. Whereas Second Step did not have those pieces, this gives us the fully aligned in elementary to really respond, as you were talking to about Young Scholar, to respond in an intervention format to make sure that we're tracking and that the students can grow in those areas.
Thanks, Danielle. I was excited to see some of that. It was great you included some of the comments about what the teachers' experience were, so that was, I found, really helpful. Board members with questions? Aaron?
I would be remiss if I didn't talk about SEL. That's my thing. So one of the notes that I see in here in the list of the strengths in particular, you mentioned authenticity and engagement. They said the video seemed more authentic. Can you explain what's the difference between the two? What makes one better than the other in their mind?
Yeah, so I think one of the things is a lot of the feedback and my daughter has Second Step in her middle school, so things I even hear as a parent is that, hey, I learned this in 6th grade. I saw the same type of video in 7th grade. So when you kind of are seeing the same thing over and over again, you want to build upon skills, right? You want to learn and introduce and really expand. one of the things that, has been a positive to Character Strong is that they're constantly taking feedback. And so even they're adapting lessons, they're adapting video. In the elementary school curriculum, not only are there videos and activities, there's a series of books that went with them. So one of our, we ordered a set for elementary school and sent that up to elementary school teachers, and they really liked how it paired together, that they could, have a literature lesson and then also pair that with, what's happening in the story in that SEL lesson as well.
Did you get any kind of feedback from the kids and like a comparison of the kids who'd had Second Step and then Character Strong, whether they liked one or the other?
I did not get a comparison of the kids, but the teachers.
I mean,
you
they're
know,
they're a
just in
good
the report,
indicator. The video comment in particular I love because I think I've said this before, but my daughter, when she was in sixth grade, she and her friend, when I was driving them to school, they said, "Yeah, life is not a Second Step video." It was basically how they described it, and I was like,
I feel like I had that same conversation.
right, exactly. So, kudos to you. This looks great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think it came out when my kids were in middle school, and I experienced those conversations as well. Anything else from the board? All right, thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it. And then I guess we'll see that back as a voting item as well. Yeah, or no? Is that just informational? Okay, that's fine.
Because we already purchased.
Yeah, that's right, because we already, have a contract. Got it. So we're going to move on to facilities and grounds. We have Randy Brown and Mike Fisher, and we're joined by Jeff Straub from Crabtree, Rohrbaugh and Associates. Welcome, Jeff. Thanks for making a long drive. And we're going to get some updates on the Park Forest Middle School project and the district-wide facility master plan.
Shoot. Hold on a second. 1 second, please.
Longer table.
There we go. All right, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to give you an update on both the Park Forest Middle School project design and also the district-wide facility master plan. We also asked Dr. Weiser, principal at Park Forest, to join us this evening so that she, in case you have any design questions or process questions from the staff perspective, she can fill you in as well as that on those as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started and say that it's been a while since we've been here to talk about these two subjects, but there have been a lot of work, and we have had a lot of people from not only our architects, our physical plant staff, but also behind the architects, our engineers and civil folks, MEP that are working on the process as well. We're now at what we would consider the 60% design, and then later in the summer, we'll look to come back at 90%, and getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but just setting the stage for you. We're hoping to go out to bid about 12 months following the Mount Nittany project, which was going out to bid in October, accepting bids in December-ish, and then hoping to break ground in January, February. So we're really excited about what we have for you tonight, and look forward to sharing this project. So Jeff, if you want to go ahead and take it from here.
Yeah, so we're going to jump in, and this is going to sort of reinforce some of comments that we just had from Randy of a schedule update. We completed and Randy used the terminology 60%, 90%, which we used heavily during the high school project as well as the elementary schools. And they sort of align with typical architectural schematic design development, and construction documents. So the 30% essentially we finished back in the fall. And now we've been moving forward with the design development, and we're going to be presenting some of that information to you this evening. Specifically for the design development, we go beyond just generating the budget. I'm going to make sure I've got this. Seems like it's going back and forth on me a little bit. We've started moving into interior design of the building. I'm getting some feedback. I'll just keep that back.
You can hear it in the mics over top. So
Okay.
yeah, you're okay.
Okay. Just this afternoon, we completed the third round of teacher interviews. We've been working on the exterior design of the building. We're going to be showing that to you this evening, working that through with the administration. The interior building design, renderings for the project, as well as floor plan coordination with engineering teams and site confirmation. We're gonna touch on the facility study components this evening, but we've got a lot to show you. That component, we're sort of going to start some conversation, and then we're going to be coming back to you in the June time period to review specifically facility assessments, the greenhouse gas emissions, Fairmount building, what direction does the district want to go with Park Forest Middle School existing building, as well as your bus facility. Some other components that we'll be moving forward in the coming months and bring forward to all of you is construction management, and the commissioning teams will be engaged directly by the district. So that's, we're working on the RFPs right now. So the May, expect that June, July, that will be brought forward. We're also working on a third-party cost estimate to be brought forward in July, Act 34 hearing process in the August to October time period. Construction documents, the 90%, as Randy mentioned, will be completed in the fall time period. And we're really trying to track, and this has really been discussed even before we started the Mount Nittany, that both Mount Nittany and Park Forest would both follow each other 12 months after each other, so that they would follow the same bidding schedule, that optimal October, November time period, to then be able to start, go through both the bidding, bring that forward to all of you, and then being able to start construction immediately when the weather breaks in the spring after contracts and paperwork has been completed. So that's sort of the overall schedule, and then a start of construction, as I mentioned, in January of 2026.
If I could just jump in real quick here on the Fairmont and Park Forest Middle School, current Park Forest Middle School discussion. Obviously, we haven't had any of that discussion yet. The administration's been working on different components or space requirements that we may have outside of our current facilities and the Park Forest, the new Park Forest Middle School. And so we'll be working with our architect team to talk about what spaces are necessary, what would be the viable spaces in either of those buildings, how can that come to fruition, what would the costs look like, and all of those components. Then also is also the bus facility, our transportation facility as well. So there are a lot of things yet to come. Don't want you to think that there's a lot of work that are decisions being made without you. We're not making decisions. We're just getting prepared to have those conversations and allow you to engage with the community because we know that those are going to be pretty serious and heavy conversations to have.
Okay, the next series of slides are going to talk about the site plan. At first glance, there hasn't been a lot of change in the overall layout of the building, but really the refinement with the engineers components have occurred in the past months. So relocation of the stormwater management, that's been presented to you at a number of meetings. Coordination of utility connections, which is going to be critical, being brought into the site, both how are we taking sewer out of the site, bring water, electrical into the site has really been a large discussion for the project. Transportation refinements with your busing and van delivery. Really what we're trying to do is set the while we're working with the civil engineer, specifically how transportation will occur, we're also trying to be reflective that that may change for the district operationally 2 years, 3 years after the building opens, which we saw on some of your other projects. So trying to create a flexibility that the site could be used differently if you change whether it's busing, parent drop-off, things of that nature. We're also working through the geothermal well field design and locations. Specifically, that's going to be, and if we actually could move to the next slide, I'm sorry, just sort of going through that. This is actually the refined site of where we're at right now. Geothermal well fields will generally be underneath the soccer field, as well as the plan north parking lot which is also for the buses at this time. And then we're also working through site grading, retaining. When you go out to the site, I think generally people see some modest slope, but there's a lot of transition from the bottom right corner of the building to the upper left corner of the building that we've been working through with the engineers and just making sure that it meets accessibility and everything that's involved with that.
So as Jeff mentioned earlier, the staff just completed a third round of reviews of the design and floor plan. And Mr. Fisher, myself, and Dr. Bucher all helped Dr. Weiser with some of those meetings so that we could provide a district perspective to some of the comments and questions that were received. And the overall consensus is that the staff is extremely excited. They're very happy, and they are really pleased with a lot of the improvement that they're seeing. One of the things that they've come away with is that they, just like we do, want the best that's possible. And so they continue to ask questions about different things. And just to bring back some levity to the situation, I mean, we know that it's not going to be perfect. There's still going to be some bumps in the road. This is still a very tight site plan, given that we need to manage the stormwater, given that we need to have an athletic field, that we want to have tennis courts, that we need to have parking lots, and we need to have a bus drop-off. But we're trying to design so that traffic can flow in multiple ways for different reasons at different times. Or if traffic flows need to change in the coming years, we'll have that. We still don't know whether there's going to be red lights onto or off of Valley Vista. So there's still a lot of those things that we're working out, and it was good insight for us to hear from the staff, but also from the staff to hear from us. I think that was helpful.
Okay. Just more of a zooming in on that overall site plan for the project. Another change that's occurred for the building is we're bringing loading and receiving not only onto the left side of the building, but also the right side at the lower level, trying to maximize how supplies are brought into the building and stored. And then just what is the crossover of the different traffic patterns. Next slide. The floor plans probably look very similar to what you've seen before, but just like the site plan, there's been a lot of refinements. Generally, the whole configuration of the building has stayed the same, but just going through those 3 rounds of meetings with the staff, of small adjustments, whether it be storage, support spaces, as well as incorporating the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems into the building, as well as maintenance, custodial support throughout the project. Next slide. And one of the more notable is in the bottom left-hand corner, the whole receiving and kitchen complex for the cafeteria. That's really changed substantially, as well as some modifications to the music suite up to the upper left of the project. We've also working through even just the last couple days on the auditorium. And how are things going to be received and brought into the building? Actually, we're going to be making some modifications to the health classrooms for the sort of green room support for the auditorium. And then the second floor plan and the ground floor, probably the most notable on the second floor plan is incorporating the 7th team, which is in the upper left-hand corner above the technical education suite of the building. Okay.
So that 7th team will be our capacity release valve in case the school does grow or the district grows, and we need that school to grow in enrollment.
Okay.
Because there's no release valve at Mount Nittany right now.
Okay, so for now, for the most part, the floor plans, the site plan, it's been refinement. But what we're going to be presenting this evening is both the exterior design as well as the interior renderings of the building in the direction that we've been working in the past months. So this is an overall rendering of the project. You do see some of the grade change going from the 3-story classroom wing, and then the site slopes up to the upper or mid-level parking at the main entry of the building. We're going to be incorporating a combination of some manufactured stone, some ground face, a wood grain metal panel, which is actually the orangish color that you see, as well as a dark bronze metal panel on the building. And this just sort of shows that overall concept. Next slide. Some imagery of the main entrance to the building with sort of a large canopy structure to protect not only students coming in and staff, but then being cognizant of how during inclement weather, the advantage that we do have on this site, which we didn't have on a few of the other buildings in the past, is that is going to be facing south. So during the winter, that will help with snow removal. But because of the slope of the site, there are going to be quite a number of stairs, ramps throughout the campus, and we're working with, in fact, we just had some discussions about setting up some meetings today to be cognizant of that, about how the building will be maintained in inclement weather throughout the year. And you can see sort of also some of the different mixings of the materials. Really, the building is roughly 275,000 square feet, so similar to what we did at the high school, trying to break that scale down for the overall building. A view of the three-story classroom wings. And you're starting to then also move around to the east facade with the sort of at the center of the bottom, or the bottom image. At the center of that is the one exit from the classroom wings going to the play fields during the day. And what we're trying to do is, you'll also see at the base, we're utilizing some of the manufactured stone that we used both at the high school. I think we also used it at Spring Creek, but then we're also incorporating in ground face masonry that'll have the same look as that material, but more cost effective. So we're trying to mix those and those materials and always focus on the cost. While we are, for instance, incorporating the wood grain metal panel, the dark brown or the dark bronze paneling, but really, in essence, the classroom wings are sort of very large rectilinear forms. So trying to stay very cost effective and stacking of the floor levels up through the building. That helps both educationally, so that as students are moving from 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, but it also cost-wise is more effective stacking up through the building. Now moving into some of the interior design concept, and you can see, for instance, we're mixing the manufactured stone I mentioned, and then on the right side of the hallway is the ground face block. And so this would be coming in the main entrance. You would have just gone through the main administration, through the security vestibule, and then been released from the reception. Up above, you're seeing the entrance going into the second floor library. So just also some graphics of announcing the middle school as you come in the building. This is now you've come in the entry. You can see that signage on the right side. While it looks like a reflection, that's actually one-way glass. That's the security office right there at the intersection, and they'll have windows looking at both people coming in from the entrance as well as being able to monitor down the main corridor of the building. And then an intercommunicating stair that you see is going up. The students would turn right and be able to go into the stair or into the classroom wings, or go upstairs to quickly enter the second floor. This is turning the other direction, so you can see the administration, guidance, and nurse is on the left side of the hallway, and then you have the gymnasium, and then further down the auditorium off of the main corridor, and then it ends with the cafeteria at that location. Some of this, along with, we're going to be bringing some of that wood grain metal into the building, both in the soffits, in the door color, and then mixing that down through the building. The image that you're seeing, and these are preliminary. They will continue to refine but we're incorporating the maroon, obviously the maroon and the gray with the district throughout the color palette. Then going into the actual academic wing, this is a little bit more preliminary, but at this point we start to transition more to a concrete block painted throughout the building for cost efficiency, but then very similar to what we did at the high school, we will be developing graphics at all the entrances, whether it's to the science, the arts, different wings of the building. Preliminarily, what we're just showing, excuse me, terminology, for instance, going into the science department. Next slide, please. Sorry. And then this is on the upper level, right over that main entrance that you would come in. You'll have two conference rooms off of the library, as well as visibility coming directly into the library at the upper level that'll look down into that main corridor of the building. So really you're going to have both your main administrative components, your primary functions of your auditorium, your gymnasium, your cafeteria, all sort of located at one central location that also we can lock down that, whether it be after hours for use. Effectively, you can shut down the classroom wings in their entirety and utilize the building for after-school use. And then going into the cafeteria at this location, the serving line that you can see, that again, those graphics may refine or be something different, but just sort of designating that, as well as looking at the front, the windows to the front approach to the building. Next slide. And this is just then going into the cafeteria at the opposing corner, so you can see sort of back to the entrance of the cafeteria. We are also looking at both ceiling clouds going down through the main corridors, in the commons, throughout the building, in the cafeteria. Acoustics is going to, which has been at all your projects, has been really a key factor that we always make sure to address. Next slide. Okay, sustainability. We could have a whole presentation just on sustainability. We're trying to move through a lot of information to present to you this evening, so we're going to sort of wrap this into one slide, but more than willing to answer questions. As we did at the high school and we did at the elementary schools, we were pretty successful, obviously, of gold certification on both of the high schools, platinum certification on all three of the elementary schools. We're following that same process of putting over an overall certification plan. This has actually been compressed just to show the main categories throughout the project, but this really breaks down that we'll be tracking generally 80 categories of sustainability throughout the building, whether it be sites, energy efficiency, water use. Some of the highlights that we're looking at is the building will be a full geothermal HVAC system, as we did with Mount Nittany. At that time then as well, more operationally for Mike and his team, not only the geothermal, but really all the elementary schools, the high school, everything is on a heat pump system. So the ability to be able to work with that equipment throughout the district. I think roughly 80 of your buildings will be heat pumps when all this is done. Daylighting and views will be a priority, indoor air quality, thermal envelope. And what we're really starting to track on is the potential, and this really has to do with other, not obviously what we're totally doing. We're going to have a very efficient system building with the geothermal, the thermal envelope that I mentioned, but tying into the SCASD solar program that all of you have been working on for the last 3 to 5 years. That along with the potential Solar for Schools grant and the solar array that's being designed in the project, the building is approaching the potential of being net zero. So that's something that we're looking at with the sustainability consultant right now at this time. Number 4 on this is just a couple of the sort of the larger alternates. is the 630 kilowatt solar array that the grant is in for and will be awarded this month. I think it's May 15th, I believe, is the hearing at the state level. So we'll know very shortly on that. And we've been having a lot of discussion on bird-friendly glass that we have an image we'll be talking about in the next. I mentioned the Solar for Schools, and preliminarily we're tracking for gold certification. And I want to make a note of that. The administration asked me, is this building going to be gold certified? Is it going to be platinum certified like the elementaries? And really, the main difference that occurred between the high school and the elementary schools, they were sort of very neck and neck with each other, and some of it was just location of the elementary schools versus the high school. In fact, I think North Building only missed platinum certification by 2 points. So it's not that we're chasing points. It's more of the overall approach is whether it's the 2 high school buildings, the 3 elementary schools, or Park Forest, or Mount Nittany Elementary School that's currently in construction. We've really sort of tried to have that same approach to sustainability and look at across the board at all components of the building. Next slide. The administration wanted me to talk about bird glass or really bird safe glass. There's a lot of different directions that can be utilized with that. I'll be frank, we've had very limited experience. So what we did was about 4 to 6 months ago, we reached out to Vitro Glass, which is one of the largest glass manufacturers, not just in Pennsylvania, but really throughout definitely the East Coast. And they're currently working on a facility on Penn State's campus, and we're currently looking at an laser etch system. And what we're looking at is incorporating it at select locations of the building, sort of strategically, which is your largest expanses of glass, your libraries, your stair tower glass, your cafeteria, gymnasiums, things of that nature. And so we will be developing that further as we move forward for the project. And the upper image is sort of, you see that sort of etched pattern that would be on the glass. Okay. Next slide just talks is the interior layouts, meetings that have been occurring. These are excerpts just from last week as we were preparing for the meetings that occurred Friday and today with your staff. On the left is the music department as well as the technical education, exactly how those are being laid out currently. Next slide, overall budget. And I know there's been a lot of discussion of where is the market right now, what are we seeing with tariffs as an example. What we did see across the board was there was an adjustment in cost in the January, February. What we are hearing, though, from cost estimators now is the fear was that you were going to see the cost inflation that occurred, for instance, post-COVID, that prices went up 20%, then 15%, then suppliers were adding another 15% because they feared it was going to continue to go. It appears that the market did go up, but it stabilized generally in the month of January. But there was some large cost increases. An example, steel went up by 8% during that time period. We're trying to incorporate that in the cost estimate that you see up on the screen. We sort of compressed that similar to sustainability, but just showing the overall cost at the low and the high range right now. So that creates that. And we've tried to build in some conservative estimating contingencies because of the volatility of the market. So you're looking roughly between $130 and $139 million. And then we will be involving a third-party cost estimator. They want to see those 30% drawing, or I'm sorry, the 60% drawings that we mentioned earlier in the schedule, so they can get a little bit much more in depth. The final cost estimate will probably be in the order of magnitude of 60 to 80 pages of detail, really breaking down every system in the building and then trying to compare that to the market conditions that are occurring, which is difficult. We're all watching the news. It changes daily or weekly.
Sometimes hourly.
sometimes hourly. So, okay. Yes. That was a lot to
Yeah.
present.
Any questions about the Park Forest project at this point in time?
Carlene?
Due to the recent incident that we had, the threat to the school, when we met parents at Barnes and Nobles, one of the main things is that they wanted to know in the new constructions, what are the safety measures that's being considered? Because although the pictures and everything else looks really beautiful, some of the people that were there, they were saying maybe there's too many glass, because although it's gorgeous, but, especially the library one, if there's an intruder and the kids are stuck there, there's glasses all around. Where will the kids hide? Locked doors. So just like we had the slide with the sustainability, it would be good if we could have a slide focusing on the safety aspect of the constructions that it's taken into consideration.
So one of the meetings that we are working to schedule at this point in time is meetings with our safety officers, with our SROs, bringing in the police departments to talk through their recommendations. Then we'll use that information from them to inform the design as well as help us determine what are the safety features that are appropriate to share with the public, and then what others we will keep confidential for protection of everybody in the building. But very good point, and we're on it. We just wanted, but it's just the timing. We wanted to get far enough in the design, but we're having some conflicts because the 3 schools that we went and toured last year had different variation and different uses of interior windows from classrooms into hallways. And they were very different, and we thought we found a nice compromise, and we're getting a lot of questions and concerns about that. We even have amongst our team. So we're going to be revisiting that as a team, talking through that, but we're going to be using it just like we did with our high school and the 3 elementary schools. We'll be relying on our SROs and our safety team.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, though.
One thing that we incorporate in all our buildings is crime prevention through environmental design. And so in some of the images that you saw, or a lot of the images, we're trying to create a building that's both inviting and warm, educational facility, but we are also trying to embed those security principles. So an example, you do see, for instance, glass, but we have there's additional components that are built into the building, for instance, locking down an entire classroom wing, instead of just focusing on that classroom itself. Or trying to balance discussions, as Mr. Brown mentioned. You have you have an active shooter situation versus bullying. One is a very high risk, which is something the district has been, working through recently, but also, the bullying aspect that occurs daily in any, building throughout the country. I think the national average is, there's conflicting reports, but 40 to 60% of students are bullied. Also, as Mr. Brown mentioned, how do your first responders move into a building? So incorporating their discussion, not just having the design team or administration make those decisions, but we involve everybody. So we will be
I did mention that
incorporating
in
that.
my answer when I was talking to the parents, but I think that if, like I said, if we could have a slide so that they know that it's been considered in the construction.
Most definitely.
Absolutely.
We can do that in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I shared about your training about safety design as part of what you're an expert in, and in that same community meeting. But I think with what happened, if we can have you talk a little bit about that, and I think Carlene's point is good. Some things in writing, the things that are appropriate that we can have written down so we can refer community members to would really help. So, because we're hoping, Jeff, you're not going to be with us a lot for too much longer after these projects are done. So it's having that kind of information kind of memorialized.
I didn't have gray hair when I started working with
you and Obama, right? So, but yeah, I do think there's kind of like a primer, like if that you could maybe give about some things for the community to kind of understand the trade-offs, because that was the bullying aspect was something I was trying to share with families. It's like that sometimes glass is advantageous for other reasons. And as to your point, it's kind of a daily basis issue. So on this side of the table, Peter?
Thank you. So you said that there's the potential for the building to be net zero for electricity.
Yes.
And but that would have to be done in conjunction with the power purchase agreement. So for that to happen, we have to get RECs. Right, so that's, I think, something that needs to come in the overall district-wide facilities master plan, not just limited to this, because the board, some of the local governments are choosing to purchase RECs. We made the decision initially to forego getting RECs, but if the board wants to have this be a net zero building, or for our buildings to be net zero buildings, then we're gonna have to do something with RECs. And I'm also wondering then, in the overall energy modeling, right, for this building, how it compares to what its demand will be for electricity and natural gas relative to the existing building, and then what we choose to do with the Park Forest Middle School going forward, because not all these things are easy. I'm not sure that I actually have a question.
I can answer. I can maybe add a little detail, but you're right. It's not quite a question. At least on the energy use, we are currently in the middle of actually having the preliminary energy models run right now.
For the 60%.
For the 60%. The building will predominantly be electric because of the geothermal system. The natural gas will be very limited use in the building.
Great.
I have a question. The plan that you outlined shares a lot of design similarities to the high school in comparison to the current middle school. Was that on purpose to help kids transition better, or was that like a happy accident?
I'm sort of smiling a little bit. Maybe I'll say a happy accident, but I think it's generally, we've had a lot of discussion about collaborative education layouts, which was very a lot of discussion and involvement in the high school. But then we also toured a number of facilities at the middle school and talked specifically with the staff. So it was influenced on similar discussions that occurred at the high school.
Because I remember when I came from the middle school over to the high school, like the middle school is all one floor. It's kind of small and it's a very different layout to the high school. And I felt like very confused and like very disoriented with the way the high school is laid out. And I think having like these 3 separate floors and having kind of a structural similarity to the high school will maybe help kids adjust a little bit better and not feel so confused and so scared about it.
That's a good perspective.
I found that the high school has now become like the gold standard for high schools, being built across the way. The more I visit these high schools, a lot of them are similar to our own. They have taken the concept, even other architecture and construction firms. So it's interesting.
It's nice to hear those feedback. We don't hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Peter?
Peter, you want to finish up?
So in some of the renderings that you have there, there's a lot of light. And so I'm wondering, because we can't see necessarily where, that's an obvious example because you can see the woods outside, right? There's a lot of natural light, but in the interior of the building, right, some of these others, so I'm wondering how natural light is going to be getting into some of the more interior spaces of the building, especially because in some of these you have 3 stories going, and so I'm just curious about that.
And this is a little deceptive. This is going down the main corridor of the building as you're, and then you actually break to the right to go into the classroom wings. And we're actually studying right now with the sustainability consultant in our team how the interior daylighting of what are the heights of those windows, and then you're trying to balance it with daylighting as well as safety and security. How do you create views strategically down corridors, things of that nature, which is things that we did at the high school because you had a very dense core.
Right.
And there were some locations, for instance, we brought solar tubes down from the roof because there was just some sectors that we couldn't daylight just because of the large size of the building. We're having those same studies here on this building. One of the things that you don't see, but if you see that graphic over the 3 TV monitors, that's actually an open to below, and that's going up to a roof skylight, whether it's a skylight or a roof clear story. We have to be careful because of maintenance for the district, but we're looking at that. It's deceptive there that you do have the view at the very end of the hallway, but there's also natural daylight coming down from 2 large openings between the floors.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, I'm just, that wasn't you need to.
Oh, no,
show
no,
me no, but that's been one of the real benefits, certainly, of some of our newer buildings, for, the experience inside the building and compared to the Park Forest Middle School that exists now, which I remember being in that building and thinking, my God. I mean, I was in junior high
I think
there.
we've heard very loud and clear from the
Yes,
staff.
I know. I'm just piling on.
I'm looking
'cause
over
it's
to
a lot of
Karen.
fun. She didn't do it.
It's like that architect's,
And
all his credentials have been, he
I
or
think
she
that
has been revoked.
My last question is a question actually about lumber, about wood, and wondering if we might be able to use any of the wood that will be, from trees that will be in one of those stormwater basins that we would be clearing, if there's any possibility that it might be milled for use in the building.
Unfortunately not. Well, I'm going to answer that in two parts. For the majority of the building, no, because by code we have to, because of the size, especially because of the size of the facility, it's going to be a non-combustible building. So block construction, the durability for your maintenance and facilities teams. So it's a combination of steel and concrete block for the majority of the building. What I didn't think about, though, is we might want to talk to the team. Are there uses of some of the wood that's on the site that maybe could be used throughout the building? And we have done that before on projects.
Yeah, even just some rustic benches for out in the rec area or something like that.
Or sometimes wood paneling at locations, things of that nature.
I'm not thinking about
That's
the interior, yeah.
No, I think some of those may be more cosmetic or
Yeah.
Okay.
Benches, whatever it might be. Hand it over to the kids and see what they can do with it. In the career
Aaron?
CT.
Was that it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I kind of have 3 questions. The first one's for Randy. Is the stormwater plan that we kind of settled on, is that represented in this final budget? It's part of the, okay.
Correct, Jeff?
The second question that I had, and I kind of touched base with Jeff on the way in, has to do with materials cost. The thing that I have been most interested in is how much of the construction cost budget is represented by materials. And the reason I ask that is because when you see price escalations of different kinds, people kind of ask me, what is that going to do to the final budget of the school? And I actually don't know how to answer. Is there, I see you have a contingency there of about, 3%. Does that, do you think that covers? I mean, it's a weird question to ask with all the instability, but
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about how to answer that. It can fluctuate. I think a rule of thumb is it's 50-50. Actually, a lot of times, 50 to 60% of the building will be the materials.
Okay.
And then labor. It can change from project to project, but probably to be safe, if you're talking to somebody, say roughly 50% of the building is labor versus materials for the project. So yeah, for instance, when steel goes up by 8%, well, that's not 8% across the board. Now, the problem is other materials have gone up. I was talking to cost estimator, and in one day, toilet partitions, not a large cost item, but went up 50%. in one day in the month of January. So that's part of the reason that we're bringing the third-party cost estimate component on to the team is we need to have a lot more detail because of what we're all seeing in the market right now. And whether initiatives or tariffs occur, is that really hitting the market or not? Did it hit in the month of January, February? Cost estimators are sometimes having those or seeing that on the real-time data and having discussions with contractors.
It's mostly a question of vulnerability in the budget to the changes. And the one other question I had, which is kind of for all of you, Randy, if we go all the way back to the design concept, you mentioned sort of this extra wing. I think you called it the release valve set of classrooms. I kind of wonder how those are going to be used until we need them, and I also wonder if cost becomes a bigger concern. What are the areas within the building of, not that I even want to think about this, but what are the areas of flexibility that we have in terms of things to add or not add that we could still do the project, but we could do without? Because I mean, we're talking about extra classrooms right now. That seems, it's not a thing that we would want to get rid of, but.
So, we're struggling with penny wise, pound foolish.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about right now a $130 million building. Let's go back 10 years and we were talking about a $140 million high school building. And that high school is a lot bigger than this building is. And cost to build is only going to go up. I think that we really need to have that release valve for the extra space for enrollment, as well, even if it's not student growth, but it's also program growth, as we've been experiencing in all three of our elementary schools, or in our elementary level of recent time. The administration's been working with Crabtree, including Karen, not just Mike and I, but to look for ways to reduce the square footage of the building. And we have a couple ideas. It's not going to be millions of dollars at this point, but at this point, any bit will help. There's, as we were going through, as you were listening to Jeff tonight, there's lots of things as far as finishes, types of products that you've seen in this design that may not make the final bid, or if they do, they may have to be an alternate. Till we get to bid day and decide. And we did that in the high school as well. There was lots of different choices there. That's why it took several weeks to analyze what was going to be recommended, and what would be accepted in the different bid considerations. So I think that we're trying to build a sustainable building. I think that we're trying to build, obviously, a 50-year building, but also make it, not only as maintainable, but also as structurally sound and give us the right amount of space.
And just to be clear, I don't look at the numbers here and think it's unreasonable at all. And in fact, I don't come away from this feeling like it, someone did ask me, hypothetically, is there a point at which this is no longer possible? And I said, I suppose technically yes, but I don't think we're anywhere close to that.
Well, we're getting close.
Yeah.
But seriously, I appreciate the question, because it gives us the opportunity to have the discussion, and for you all to understand this. It's now documented that we had it in the board at a board meeting, so that the community can understand. Because of the three rounds of staff review, there's always lots of questions, and many times the staff is asking just to know whether it's possible or not. And there's been a lot of really good ideas that have come out, but we also have to be mindful that it may cost money, and it may not be viable.
I've even had staff and parents ask me, is there a point at which you would delay the start of this just to see if the costs come down? And Jeff, usually my answer is I don't think costs usually come down.
No,
So,
I guess we all would love that.
Wouldn't that be
but
nice? Yeah,
Unfortunately, what you see is these market shifts, and sometimes, frankly, post-COVID, the reason prices went up so much was there had been stagnation in the construction market, actually for a 10 or 15-year period. And what happened was it was a market correction that was really accommodating inflation that should have been occurring over 10 or 15 years. So unfortunately, we don't see prices coming down, which is the difficulty of sometimes when you see this escalation, it's not going to come back down. Companies, suppliers are setting new standards, and we need to plan for that. One bit more detail with that 7 team. We felt pretty comfortable with that also because this project is not a PD project. But there was a lot of good aspects of the PD process when it was in place. And one of the things that the Department of Education always did, their architects always asked, was, have you planned in for growth? And typically, PD set a 10% benchmark for that to occur. When you look at the size of the 7 team, we're effectively talking about 10% growth capacity in the building. And you never try to have your building be at full capacity anyways. Typically, for instance, a secondary building, you're trying to design around 80%. So that should give you, some growth.
Yeah, I mean,
or just the ability to spread your program a little bit.
I would
and
much
then-
rather add a 7th team than try to build another wing later. That's,
Yeah.
But it's being built in case we need to build again later as well.
Yep.
Right. We talked about how just like we're able to add on to the end of Mount Nittany L, we've tried to build those opportunities in with the most recent buildings we've built.
I hope to be retired by the time they need to do that, so.
Oh, I will be.
Yeah.
Based on the timing of like 60-90%, I know 60 is going to be coming up pretty soon before the end of the school year, right around there. Just have we made plans for like community engagement?
Well, that was last week's project, but I had a little hiccup.
Okay.
So yes.
Okay.
We want to have community meetings.
Okay.
Before summer kicks into spring.
Great. So I just wanted to say
Kicks
that
into
out
gear.
loud for the
Yep,
community that those
absolutely.
will be
Nope.
happening
Yes.
beyond just what we've talked about today. So, go ahead.
About that little hiccup, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Randy and Mike for getting power into all our schools.
Yeah.
That was a major feat.
Yeah. Appreciate your diligent work. Did I see a hand? Yeah, Gretchen.
Yeah, that was one of my questions, was about community engagement and just thinking about, the other projects and I guess sensing that we haven't had any since the stakeholder meetings, which feels like a while ago now. So now that we're at 60%, but the high school project, for example, we had 30, 60, 90, like, are we planning on a 60%? Are we not planning on a 60%? That kind of thing. And then I thought Carlene's suggestion might tie into that really seamlessly, because if we're doing, for example, a 60% community meeting, to also talk about the safety measures that are being incorporated into the architecture. And I think that, judging, as Carlene said, from the feedback that we got at Barnes & Noble with the last board coffee, there would be, I would guess, a lot of interest in that and probably a higher than average turnout for that. So to include that in the 60% meeting would probably make a lot of sense. I was also wondering what Aaron was wondering, which is, are the building materials from other countries? Because that's gonna affect everything, and nobody knows how much. So rhetorical question there. And is this, Jeff, you said that the building is being built sustainably, and you're not counting points. So are we aiming for LEED certified, or just saying we're not aiming for LEED certified, we're just gonna build it sustainably?
Yeah, again, that could be a 2-hour conversation. Look, it could be a multiple day conversation. We are, first of all, the district has made the board motion in the past, I think it was 2010 or 2012, that all major projects will be at least U.S. Green Building Council LEED Silver. So currently, we are registered for both Mount Nittany and for Park Forest with the U.S. Green Building Council, and we are tracking LEED Gold, high LEED Gold to potentially LEED Platinum. And I guess what I more meant with the point chasing is, in the past, you have heard people just sort of chasing points. We sort of take a holistic approach that we look at every component of sustainability across the building. When you do that, you naturally end up with a LEED Gold, typically a LEED Gold certified building, because we're looking at everything from how it knits into the community, whether it be bike routes, how are we sensitive to, tying into that infrastructure, to energy efficiency, to daylighting that Peter spoke of. We're not ignoring any factor or component in the building.
Yeah, and the reason I asked is because there was another project where we decided not to get it LEED certified, even though it would have hypothetically been sufficient to do so. And so that's why I asked, is this actually going to end up LEED certified?
Yes, this will be LEED certified. Well, knock on wood.
Yeah, okay. No, that's helpful.
With that, the nice thing that what I've found out through my whole career is working with U.S. Green Building Council, probably the most takeaway is, because sometimes people will say that of, well, our building's sustainable, we're doing all the components, but you don't have a really way to validate that. The U.S. Green Building Council system, and it's like any tool, whether a computer system, it sets up a very strong rigor. And then it also a validation. So when you walk away, you will know what the energy efficiency of this building is. We will know the average element. When we did the 3 elementary schools, I think the average daylighting was 96% across the board for the 3 elements. That all educational spaces were 96% naturally daylit. We'll know those components, and that's the advantage of U.S. Green Building Council.
Yeah. Well, great. I'm glad that we're paying attention to that, and that's the goal. And then my last question was, for example, in the renderings that we saw tonight, there's, I think, dark bronze was, the color scheme, for example. Are those types of choices, have they already been made? And if so, who made them? Because I remember with those types of choices for the other schools that we built, there were choices presented to the board, and there was discussion about, we talked for hours and hours about ground face CMU, so when you said that, it definitely rang a bell. So anyway, I'm just curious, are those just in the renderings? Have those already been decided? Is there going to be any possibility for community input on those decisions, or what is the process for those kinds of decisions?
Good.
So they are preliminary, though we are pretty set on, for instance, the metal panel system. But the colors, things of that nature could change. I think on the choice of the ground face, we had very detailed conversation on the high school. But as example, then we took some of those color palettes into Spring Creek. There, I think it was more set. And we've had similar discussions on Park Forest. What we were trying to do with the look is we're going with a wood grain metal panel, the dark bronze, some of the manufactured stone, though a limited amount of it, and then the ground face. And the reason we were doing that was trying to create a palette that sort of knits into the Park Forest wooded environment at that location, which is appeared to be preliminarily received well with the administration that we met with. But that's also why we're presenting it to you this evening. And we try to have quite a number of images for you to look at, to hear your feedback, concerns, or if everybody's comfortable with the direction. And then we will also take that out to the community and present that, as well as the interior renderings. Those have just been developed over the last month. So those will continue to evolve as well. So any feedback that all of you have would be, well taken.
I think Angel had a question.
This might be a dumb question, so I'm going to pre-warn you, but you said something about like bird-proof glass. I worry in an environment with middle schoolers that the excess amount of glass could provide some potential safety concerns, but also I saw a lot of glass within reach of child hands, and I worry that might be some excessive work for custodians because we have railings that like we have railings currently that won't leave fingerprints, but I saw glass railings that will leave a lot of really sticky fingerprints from sixth graders, and that might be really, really annoying for custodians to clean.
I just said you might be a future facilities director. So. Point well taken. There are areas that, your more public areas, you use a lot of glass. What heights are at. Actually, something that we're looking at through the classroom wings is the glass will be at a higher level, so that, for instance, when kids or students are seated, they're not distracted by people walking down the hallways. And we actually saw that on some of our tours.
Like, because
Yeah,
I was looking at,
No, I was just going to echo what Jeff said. We're fortunate that we got to tour some middle schools where they had some of those configurations and they had them for a couple of years, or even one of the buildings had been quite a number of years. And so they gave us some few things that they thought were going to be problematic, turned out to be not quite so much. And they did share a couple things that did turn out to be problematic. So we were luckily informed by some of those tours.
I think the bird-proofing glass is a really good idea because at the high school we have kind of what you guys have in the cafeteria of like the floor-to-ceiling glass panels, and there was like a shattering. I remember at the beginning of the year, like the glass got broken and cracked from it. So I think like bird-proofing glass and kind of reinforcing that glass in areas where like rocks might get tossed around, or like, middle schoolers are less responsible than high schoolers. So like reinforcement on glass could be nice, especially for safety concerns.
All right. I'm going to suggest this be our last question just so that we can get on to Mount Any Owl.
It's not even a question.
Okay.
It's a very quick follow-up to what Gretchen said about the lead, because when we had that discussion, we had said that we would keep the resolution for schools, not necessarily that physical plant building, right, the facilities building. And this raises once we get the greenhouse gas inventory, right, and that we can do a revisit at least policy 833, the sustainability policy, because then we can choose to put, the LEED certification or the minimum silver requirement into a policy instead of a resolution. And I really look forward to getting into that.
Yeah, and that
this
resolution
summer.
had some dollar points that are really irrelevant at this point in time.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
It's
we
very-
definitely, I know Anne's got that on her agenda for the policy committee, and so that's certainly coming up for us. So do you guys want to hit Mount Any Owl, or?
We didn't get to the district-wide facility
Oh,
master
I'm
plan,
sorry.
But before we switch, I'd like Karen to have an opportunity to speak.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sorry, it all ran together in my head.
I just want to really say thank you that my staff has had the opportunity, not once, but 3 times, to provide feedback and have input in the design. And Jeff and his team has been very, very responsive. I know we've been sending lots of emails with updates and questions and wonderings, and they've been great in responding to all of our needs and making sure that we're going to be creating the best learning environment for our students. So I just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I certainly know the team of teachers that participated on the tours were really enthusiastic to participate, so I know you've had a really engaged community of your faculty and staff.
So we just have a few more slides related to the district-wide facility master plan. And as Jeff said, some of this information we've been working internally with Jeff for a while and his team, and we have some more work to do, and then we'll be coming back hopefully in June for a future meeting. So you want to go ahead, Jeff?
Yeah, we're going to move for the sake of time, because and as we were preparing for this week, actually that was the discussion, was we have a lot of information to share with all of you. And so what we felt was it was probably more effective this month to really focus on Park Forest, because there has been a lot of evolution. Obviously the site plan and floor plans generally look the same, but the exterior components of the building, the interior, the sustainability, we obviously had some discussion. So the thought is we're going to come back preliminarily next month and we'll be talking a little bit more focused just on the facility components. And some of these slides are actually from previous PowerPoints. We've been working with Mike's team, and really a lot of times specifically with Mike, going through each of the individual buildings, so holistically looking at all the systems. Next slide. We're actually in the process of, we've generally updated this slide of just across all the buildings, but also incorporating some, for instance, the bus facility and the existing Park Forest Middle School project. Next slide. And these are just some of the breakdowns for individual buildings. And if we could move forward to the next slide, page 27 or slide 27. And what I want to sort of note is, without going into each of these, we sort of have some questions for all of you and some discussions for you administratively and board of directors of what do you want to do with the existing Park Forest Middle School. We've been inputting the Fairmount building into the computer, and there's been some preliminary discussions about how to utilize that building, but really that's obviously a discussion for all of you as a community of how you want to move forward with that. And there's a lot of opportunities, as well as the bus facility. Whether it's incorporating, for instance, there's been a lot of discussion about electrification, but just in general, no matter what, a modernization needs to occur at that building, just with the exterior envelope of the building, the interior shops. Do we move the bus facility to another location? What is available for district-owned facilities or acreage right now within the district? Those have been some general discussions that we've had with the administration. Next slide, 28. So we have surveyed Fairmount. Actually, I've been in that building many, many times over the years, especially when we were working on the Delta Edition. But we've really been a little bit more systematic of entering the building into the computer. We're prepared to start laying that out of what programs, whether it be in instructional support, office opportunities for the district. Do we potentially separate, have different sectors of the building? Because part of the problem is the building is really broken up. You'd effectively have to have 2 elevators to make the building ADA compliant at this time. Well, some discussions we've had with facilities is the first thing to do is to stabilize the building. So a new roof, brick windows, and then potentially what you might do is shell the building out and then renovate sectors of the building. Maybe we renovate half the building for some programs or administrative, and then the other half of the building. So just preliminarily at today's dollars, you're looking at $16 to $18 million to renovate that building. But is that broken down through a series of projects? And that's, again, a discussion that you as a district need to have. Okay. And then also we've been looking at the bus facility as well as the existing Park Forest Middle School. And some discussions that have even been mentioned quite a while ago at the board level was, do we keep the building? Do we remove the entire building? Do we keep half the building for another use in the district? The reason I have the upper right-hand slide, though, is you're taking stormwater underneath the building, which has been a problem in the past. It's a major problem during the construction of the high school. You also have some sewer runs from the local housing that's also running through underneath the building. That's very unusual, which has also been a problem in the last few years for the community. So we need to address that. Okay.
Hey, Jeff, where is that upper right-hand picture? Like, where is that? Like, is that part of the left-hand picture?
So that photo was me and Mike walking the site a week or two ago. And that's almost right at the halfway point in the building. So think about it generally where the cafeteria is.
Okay.
on the one side is where that opens up.
Thank you.
Sure. Go ahead.
Just once again, this might be silly, but on the Fairmont building topic, at the 50-year Delta reunion, which I attended earlier this year, well, we actually had this topic brought up because it was Delta property, and we were kind of discussing what we wanted to do with it. And kind of a silly idea that was thrown out that I really liked was out in Harrisburg, the old Bishop McDevitt High School was turned into a seasonal haunted house, and that was thrown around that Fairmont could be a seasonal haunted house because it pulled in a lot of revenue for Harrisburg. And I don't know, Fairmont has the right conditions. It could be fun.
Right now, indeed it does. Did you have a question, Peter?
No, I was
Okay.
just going to say where the
Oh.
stormwater feature is. Yeah, it's on the slope near the cafeteria. Yeah.
Not good.
Okay.
All right.
So we'll be back.
Well, oh, yeah, sorry, Debbie.
Just, if we're going to talk about the facility assessments in June, I think that's going to be a humongous document, multiple pages per building. Can we have that sooner as opposed to later? Because I'm guessing most of it is already almost done anyway. So that would just help us with our reading. Thanks.
Understood.
All right.
Okay.
Now maybe Mountain and Neo?
Yes.
All right. And then after that, we're going to take a short 5-minute break because I need to use the restroom. You all can sneak away, but I cannot, so.
I'll stick around.
All right, so moving right along, we got some of the unsuitables out. Things have been going very well. Recent weather has held us up a little bit. It's a little wet over there, but so again, it's kind of the same format as last time. Just a couple of pictures. This is showing the footers of the expansion footprint report, and then another picture of the well field. So the 54 wells that are being drilled. And you can kind of tell it gets a little messy out there, but as soon as it dries out, it'll clean out. So really current progress here. Our foundations, so what you saw in the first picture, about 75% complete. We're putting in the grounding system for the electrical system. Well drilling, they have it down to 1 rig. They should be done this week. And then retaining wall work, so we're putting up block or CMU. And then the stormwater basins, if you go over there, I mean, you can see that all the excavation's been done, and the elevations are good on them. So, and then really next step, we pour in the concrete slab here in the next couple of weeks, kind of setting all the electrical and plumbing sleeves that go in to put conduit in later. The geothermal system vault, so with all the wells, all those wells get piped into basically an underground vault with a hatch, and then come together into a common header that goes into the building. And then, underground utilities are starting to go in too. In addition, it's a lot of submittal review coming in that, our group is also reviewing as well as, Jeff's group. So right now it's good progress.
Not as exciting as having to get generators, but exciting, good exciting, not bad.
I'll take
exciting.
this exciting.
I know you, yeah, I agree. I wish only this for you moving forward. Any questions really quickly on Mountain EL? Thanks, Mike, appreciate it. Thanks, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess.
Yep, see ya.
CNET, are you ready? She's always ready. All right. All right, I'm going to resume the May 5th, 2025 State College Area School District Board of Directors meeting, and we're going to move on to Finance Committee. We've got a budget development update with Joe and Randy.
Okay, we just have a few items for you tonight to update since our last discussion on the budget, and I'll turn things over to Joe.
Good evening. Going through the presentation and starting on slide 2, there's some key items for this budget update. First of all, there's continuing investigation into health insurance with Highmark. Highmark has, they gave us a large credit, a 7-digit credit, and we investigated it with our actuaries, and they said, no, actually you shouldn't have gotten that 7-digit credit. So now we're trying to figure out why we got a 7-digit credit than why we got it taken away. So we're still going and figuring it out, but if that credit goes away, the projections that we've been showing you is exactly where it's ended up. We received on May 1st the state property tax reduction allocation. Basically, the good news is that came in about $300,000 higher than last year. So there will be a shift in the projections that you are shown for the final budget. We are working on that today, but basically it's going to be a shift of revenues, $300,000 from local real estate taxes and $300,000 decrease in local real estate taxes, $300,000 increase in the state property reduction allocation line item under state funding. Aside from the budget amendment for 24-25 set for approval tonight, the budget is unchanged since the April 21st presentation. And then we have a couple other items within this budget going forward. So the budget does still include a 4% tax increase, and that is at the Act 1 index. Moving forward, you can see the different components of the budget, between the revenue items of the budget. Again, the largest portion is the local share. The 25-26 budgeted expenditures, again, unchanged, as is the use of $3 million to fund balance to fund debt service. The changes in projected expenses that we have talked about, what's been driving the increase, salaries and benefits, whether it's contracts, the additional positions for this year, or increase in substitute rates, salaries and benefits at 70% of the budget have the largest impact on the bottom line and the revenues and the tax increases. Moving forward to taxpayer impact, this slide was exactly where everything was as of Friday. Today we rerun some of these numbers. We weren't able to update this slide at the late hour, and we're still rerunning some of the numbers. But I think the good news is with a 4% Act 1 in tax increase that we're having this year, with that $300,000 additional from the state, the impact for our homestead, farmstead approved property will be closer to 3.5% at the median value, assessed value for the district. So one of the big questions we have coming forward is a supplemental property tax rebate. We have dedicated $100,000 to this program since inception, and for the past few years we've been in about the $65,000 to $75,000 range. As you know, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's program became a lot more generous this year. They not only increased the limit from $35,000 to $45,000 by which you can file for a rebate, but they also increased the amounts from $250 to $600 to $380 to $1,000. What that means is we have been spending it down quite a bit. I received at the end of the tax season a large batch of property taxes. We rebated it to the customers in line of where they were. And then right afterwards, we got a second large batch in. Again, I think people did this on the backside of filing their 1040s this year with their taxes. So at this point, we appear to be trending closer to $110,000 in terms of rebates. However, within the resolution, the board has allocated $100,000 towards the property rebate program. So the question for the board would be, for 24-25, do we hold the allocations firm, which means not all applications would be paid, or do we approve an increase in the allocations? And then for 25-26, do we want to do something similar? And again, we've held these applications, which I did receive late last week, as this was a late change to the agenda item. So the property owners have not experienced a delay in the filing versus the reimbursement. Next steps will be the district publishing the notice of intent to adopt the final budget, which is due out next week. The budget hearing is scheduled for May 19th, with board action on the budget occurring on June 2nd and all the proper documents filed by the middle of July. With that, we'd be happy to take any questions and again, request feedback on the supplemental property tax rebate program.
Questions first? Anything outside of the supplemental property tax? Okay. Questions about that? Comments?
I would be in favor of increasing the allocation so everybody gets the rebate.
Other input? Go ahead. Go ahead, Debbie.
Yeah, I mean, I would be in favor of increasing the allocation. It's a relatively small amount. And especially in the midstream, I would feel very uncomfortable telling taxpayers retroactively, sorry, we didn't know that we were gonna hit the limit, and so now it's first come, first served, but you didn't know that. So
We do make that clear.
okay,
Yeah,
but
was-
still.
When we first passed it, it was,
We
'cause we had no
haven't
idea how much it
hit
would
the
be.
limit
We have not hit it
before.
before, no, you're absolutely correct.
So I don't
But
think
it
for
is an
this year,
expectation.
I think for this year, we should meet all. And then we can discuss maybe moving forward, whether we need to have a different point of view, or we increase it and then hold firm at a new level or something.
Okay, so all we're looking for tonight is guidance, so I'm hearing a couple increase. So if there's a large number of you that are opposed, then we need to know that, otherwise we'll come back at the next board meeting with the appropriate action.
No, okay.
Just a question. So it sounded like there was a more generous, like a new formula you were talking about. Do we anticipate exceeding this number then more in the future, or?
The program appears stable for 25-26 as compared to 24-25.
Okay.
So my thought is 25-26 will largely mirror 24-25.
Be about the same. Okay.
Because prior to this increase, the 3 previous years had pretty much mirrored each other in the $70,000 to $75,000 range.
And it's usually the same group of people, I would assume, yeah.
I had a question though. So, because I don't remember what buckets we assigned. I know the process of approval, we followed the state, but was the dollar figure awarded, were we matching the state previously? So we basically doubled the rebate.
Yes.
Okay. I just couldn't remember whether we had a flat figure, so.
It depends with other thresholds and different things, but for the most part, everybody gets matched.
Okay. So I guess that's just a question I have is, I know the administration of the program was a big, complex thing that we made that choice to match. But there's no obligation that we make the choice to match. There, we could choose a different dollar figure to match, or for those 2 categories, because there's like 2 categories, right, roughly, or is it multiple in terms of the award?
There are
from the state?
four different categories, and then within those 4 different categories, the state has elected to give a 50% multiplier on some sort of basis that I am unaware of. But they will sometimes give a multiplier out there, which can
Okay.
also give you 8 different rates rather than 4.
So that's pretty complex. Okay. I was just thinking of like, what are our options aside from just increasing the total bucket? Or is there other
We haven't
approaches?
We haven't looked at anything right now, so
Okay.
If you're going to take an action, I would just ask that you, for right now, for 24,
Totally
25,
good
and
with,
25,
no, yeah,
26.
no, for this current, I agree, no. That's what I was just thinking, in the future,
yep.
Is there another way we could skin this cat, so to speak, to help people, but also keep things from getting
All right, we'll come back
too
with
large?
a resolution to change authorization for 24, 25, and then also expect to make that change for 25, 26.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions?
All right.
All right,
Thank you.
Thanks very much. So that concludes our committee of the whole portion of the agenda. We now have time for additional public comment. Do we have anyone remotely? We'll start there tonight. Who'd like to make public comment? This is general public comment. No, okay. Anyone here in person? Okay. All right, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. This includes several items that we'll address in a single motion for approval. To facilitate any questions, we'll go through each category individually. First off, we start with the minutes. Any corrections there? Usually not. Lynn does a great job. Finance and personnel, we have some seal provider agreements, gasoline, diesel, and heating oil and propane, some routine reapprovals of agreements with various individuals. We'll potentially reappoint Mr. Etter as our solicitor this evening, and some culinary equipment. Any questions in this category?
Yeah, Amy, I just wanted to say that we will be appointing a new CAC for Finance member.
that's right.
And so I just wanted to thank Brad Grasnick for agreeing to serve on that committee, and we really look forward to working with him.
Thank you. When I read it the first time, I wanted to call attention to that, and then this late hour, I missed it. So thanks. I agree. Thanks very much for joining our CAC.
Just got a quick clarification.
Sure.
Is every time we add somebody from the community to a CAC, we need to put that on the consent agenda? Is that correct?
Yeah, we typically approve
Okay.
those. Mhm.
Okay.
Instructional programs, any questions or problems? Okay. And physical plant routine contracts, anything there? All right. Oh, you have one? Go ahead.
No, Aaron, did we miss someone? I just want to make sure we didn't miss anybody. Okay. 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 All right. I just wanted to check.
Yeah. Good question. I didn't think about that. All right, well then I'll call for a motion to approve the consent agenda items 10 through 13 as presented.
Have so moved.
Demo second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any last additional questions or discussion? Any public comment on the consent agenda? No, it's okay. Okay. All right, board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That items, all those items have passed. We're going to move on to action items at this point. Agenda item 14A is a motion to approve the 2025-2026 appointment of Baker Tilly as district auditor. This is shown in attachment 14A.
Buck, so moved.
Have second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? We've worked with them for quite a long time. This was a new RFP, and they've continued to rise to the top. Any questions? Any public comment on this item? No. All right, board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is passed. Agenda item 14B is a motion to approve proposed new staffing positions for 2025-2026 as shown in attachment 14B.
Have so moved.
Trevor, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. We reviewed this at a previous meeting and there's been no changes as a voting item, but any questions since that period of time? All right. Any public comment on this item? All right, board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is passed. Agenda item 14C is a motion to approve the purchase of 5 handheld metal detector wands as shown in attachment 14C. Do I have a motion?
Anderson, so moved.
Have second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. So these would supplement our additional purchases that we made at a previous meeting. The portable detectors and then these.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna ask the question of when would we use these versus those actual metal detectors? Like, how do we decide where things go and when and?
Sequence.
So for these, we will use more readily because if we have reasonable suspicion that we have to do some sort of search for any kind of weapon, knife, or anything like that, we can quickly use these rather than searching, pockets and things like that. We can do a quick search.
Question. How many do we already have? Like, how many total would that be? Because we do have some already, don't we?
They're mainly, I want to say 4.
Yeah, I think.
2.
So that'll bring the total to 9?
But I think some of the SROs have some too of their own. So
I was just concerned, the usage, the way you said it, like, we're going to use them when we suspect.
you have to have reasonable suspicion. So if, for example, a student says that this student has a knife, we wouldn't necessarily have to search their pockets and we could just quickly.
Right, but how many do we need for that, though? That's my question.
Well, we have multiple middle schools and the high school. There's multiple administrators. There's top down. There's Delta.
I understand that, but it's the handheld one we're talking about. Like,
Yeah, the handheld.
Are we talking about like specific students that we are targeting, or?
No, it's no targeting. It's just If someone
Has
has
this-
reasonable if we get reasonable suspicion that something might be occurring or.
So we
you know,
wouldn't put the portable
No,
detector
this has nothing.
instead?
If we use the portal, when a student comes through
Right.
and they're flagged, we will then take the wand and
I
figure
see.
out what flagged the metal detector. You see what I'm saying? So they would go through, and then we would use the wand to find out what, whether it was a chain or something in their pocket or something in their book bag.
Okay.
Make sense?
I was just going to say, it was my understanding that part of a main goal of having these 5 is that they can then be matched with the 5 portable metal detectors that we have.
That's one purpose.
So if the metal detectors are deployed and a student walks through and sets it off, instead of having to do an actual search of the student, you could use the wand, which would, excuse me, make that go a lot faster. So why do we need 5? That was my understanding of why we were asking for more.
So we have 7 total. We'll have 2 upstairs and we'll have 2 downstairs, and then we'll have 1 out the Delta program. But we also have middle school, right? Not that we have metal detectors there, but just in case we would need them at those. We don't want to be running them all over the school district, so that we have them in various locations. And the right program. Yeah, sorry.
No, the disbursement was part of
Oh,
my.
sorry.
Yep, no, you're good.
Would there be any potential value to having 1 per building in case they needed them readily? Or you would just,
It sounds like this would cover all of secondary, essentially,
Yeah,
which is the
we're-
most common place
The
we
most
use them.
common places. We rarely have something in the
Yeah.
elementary.
okay,
It's
yeah.
rare.
Okay. I've seen hands go up and down. I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay.
I had
Oh,
I had a slight question. I don't know if any of you know the answer to this, but after the threat was received, we got an email saying that kids at the Delta program would be waved down with the wands, and then we had to go through the metal detectors. Is there a reason for that? That the metal detectors, like the walkthrough ones, were utilized instead of the wands?
At first, we didn't have metal detectors there, so we used the wands. So that's why we used the wands instead, because we didn't have enough metal detectors.
A lot of kids at the Delta program said that they felt a lot safer with the metal detectors and the wands, so.
All right. Okay, so that covers questions and discussion. Any public comment on this item? Okay, board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is passed. Agenda item 14D is a motion to approve an SRO agreement with Patton Township. This is shown in attachment 14D.
Hudson moved.
Anderson, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. This is a renewal of our previous agreements with no substantive changes. Any questions regarding this MOU? Yeah, Debbie?
I think the main change is that it is a longer-term agreement.
Correct,
And so we
I'm
don't
sorry.
have to renew it as frequently.
Yes.
But since we've had a successful agreement for the past several years, it's just codifying the same thing for multiple years.
Yep.
I was curious, was it Chief Gardner who was here a few weeks ago?
Yes.
Right, and there had been some discussion about potentially increasing the level of connection between the district and the SROs and the officers themselves. I don't know if that's something that we're considering, or if it doesn't apply to Patton Township, or if that's, I don't know if that's like an ongoing discussion, or if that was just we'll provide that if needed.
Yeah, I think lately, It's an ongoing discussion. They're
Okay.
always meeting. Even when, if you remember, Bellefonte had that incident last year, I want to say a couple of years ago. Our police force was in contact with them and assisted them and with their process there. So, and then they all got together and did a reflection of the best practices.
So in essence, additional security would be like supplemental to this. This is sort of our basic agreement.
This is
Okay,
basic.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, because the resource officers are a cooperative funded, their position is that, so other officers are funded by the municipality as opposed to the way that we operate these positions. Other questions? Any public comment on this item? Okay, those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that item is passed. Agenda item 14E is a motion to approve an SRO agreement with State College Borough, shown in attachments 14E.
Miller, so moved.
Huff second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Similar case with this one. Yes, Peter?
Yeah, even though it is practically identical, I think that it's important for members of the public to note that our SROs are not involved with student discipline. That's something that comes up repeatedly, and especially as it's related to conversations about our relationship with the State College Borough Police Force. So that's why I'm addressing it at this one. And I think that I'm really pleased, and I think our community is really pleased with the level of training that our SROs get, the certification that they get, the role that they played in thwarting the recent shooting, the connections that they have to other social services, I think it's important to reiterate that they do not play a role in school discipline.
And several years ago, we added that language to this MOU.
Yeah.
And it's also included in detailed information on our website regarding our SROs and safety. So no, I'm not discounting what you're saying, but I just want to back up. If people have specific questions about that information, it's both contained here and additionally on our website.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of confusion about that.
Yeah,
For sure.
and I understand based on the way that they function in some other places, it's important for us to be really clear about that so that our community can understand their role in particular.
Other comments or questions? All right, any public comment on this item? Board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that item is passed. Final agenda item 14F is a motion to reject bids for a Panorama Village HVAC system replacement shown in attachment 14F.
Huff so moved.
Buck second.
I know, but it would be so nice to be fixed, but not at that price. Any questions about this one? All right, any public comment on this item? All right, board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that item is passed. That concludes our agenda for this evening. Looking ahead to future meetings, we have May 19th, 2025 is a budget hearing, which is followed by a regular board meeting. That'll start at 7 p.m. here in the Panorama Village Boardroom. May 20th, we'll have a Policy Development Committee meeting. That'll be at 1:30 here in the Panorama Village Boardroom. And with that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. Have a good night, everyone.